Hey guys, Optics here, and in this episode of SWTOR Weekly, I'm going to teach you a little bit about key bindings. Now I'm going to try and teach you as fast as possible and with as much detail as possible, and I'm going to try and guide you through what your key bindings should look like roughly, and what sort of abilities should you key bind to what sort of keys. I hope you enjoy the video and be sure to stay tuned to SWTOR Weekly. So you'll see that I have 1, 2 and 3 as unchanged. I put Backblast, Sucker Punch and Blaster Whip as my 1, 2 and 3 because these 3 are my rotation abilities. They're my main rotation abilities, so I need to be able to press these fast. They basically need to be next to each other so that I'm not reaching from one side of the keyboard to another for very similar abilities, because these are going to be following each other. I want them to be on the keyboard, I want them to be next to each other because it's more organized and it's going to help me stay and not press the wrong abilities, and generally it's going to suit me better because if I have my 3 rotation abilities next to each other on the keyboard, I could just press my keys in a certain order. So if you get all of your rotation abilities, there aren't normally many of your rotation abilities, and try and put them on 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now you'll see on 4 I have distraction. This is my interrupt. I'm a PvPer, so my distraction, well, it should be like this for everyone, but my distraction has to be very fast, and I need it to be on a key that is very near my fingers, so it has to be very near W, A, S and D. So it either has to be on Q, E, R, F or 4, because pressing something with my thumb is a little bit slower than pressing something with my index finger. So I have distraction on 4, and that's so I can do it fast. Now you'll see that I have my 2 stuns, Dirty Kick and Flash Grenade, both on keys that are right next to WASD, as in there are no keys barring its way. E is right next to W, and that's my Dirty Kick, that's my normal stun. F is right next to D, and that's for my long stun, my CC. And that's because they also need to be fast, just like the distraction, but that's going to be used for more practical purposes in PvP, and I'm going to be using it more often. Then I've got things like V, which is pugnacity, and that's stretching a little bit further away from the keyboard because that is something that I won't be pressing very often. It might not be something that I press in combat because pugnacity is something that recovers my energy over time. I do want to keep it up all the time, but most of the time I'm just going to be using it after or before a fight. So if that's not going to be in combat, I want it to be on V, but I need to keep it key bound because there is a chance that I will need to use pugnacity in combat, as it lasts for 45 seconds. If it's a mega long fight, then I need to be able to use pugnacity fast. So abilities that you won't be using in combat very often or not at all, you should keep them key bound to a key that is a little bit further away from your fingers. Not too far away that you can't press it, obviously, but something like V or G or T would be suitable. Now I also have Q, which is my shoot first, right next to W, because again that is part of my stealth rotation, so that being next to 1, 2 and 3, right below it in fact, this is going to help with organisation, and it's going to allow me to press keys in a certain order, so I can go Q, 1, 2 and then 3, and that will be a rotation. And that's something you need to think about, getting your keys in an order of rotation for your abilities in game. Now I have an ability called the Excess Frighter Flyby. This is actually something I've keybound to Alt Q. Now a lot of people, I know a lot of my friends are uncomfortable with using Alt or Shift in anything because they seem to not be able to do it while moving. But this is a cast, so you'll see that I have all of my casts. Underworld Medicine, I have Coltopack up here. All of my casts are alt and something, because I've heard that people find to cast while moving or use alt and shift and a key while moving is very difficult. So I have Alt, and anything that is a cast, I use Alt and something. For the Fly to Flyby, I have Alt Q. For the Underworld Millicent, I have Alt E, and they're all casts. For Cultopack, I have Alt V, and that's because they're casts, and it's quite hard to press Alt and something while moving compared to keys like Q, E, R, F and V. So that's also something you should consider. Now, going on to 5, as you can see, I have quite big fingers, so it's not that hard for me. But going on to 5, some people might feel a bit of strain on their index finger. So 5 is not as easy to press as 1, 2, 3 and 4. So I have my auto attack on 5 because that's not that important. It doesn't do much damage at all. It's something I would only use when I'm very low on energy. So I have that not as one of my priority keys, which is what I would like to call the keys that are very close to W, A, S and D. So I think you should have your auto attack on 5 unless it's a very important part of your rotation, then you want it somewhere a bit closer than 5. I've got things like tranquilizer on R because they are nearly as important as my stuns, but this is a CC that I can only use in stealth, so I'm not going to be using that as often as my other stuns like E and F, which is Dirty Kick and Flash Grenade, because I can only use it in stealth. So that has a little less priority than E and F, so I have it keybound on R, but that's because it's still quite important. Now I have Escape, and this is my CC breaker. There's sort of an argument with where you should have your CC breaker keybound, because some people would say that it should take up a space on your priority keys, because in PvP you have to do it very fast. However, it has a 2-minute cooldown. So the fact that it has a 2-minute cooldown makes me not want to put such a long cooldown on one of my priority keys. Now I can hit T just fine, but because I won't be using this very often, I don't want to put it closer, because there's always a chance that your finger will slip or hesitate for a millisecond, and a millisecond does count in PvP, but I think that because Escape has such a long cooldown, I'm not going to put it on one of my priority keys. I'm going to have it on something that I can reach, but something that isn't that hard to reach. And the same rule goes for my Disappearing Gaps, which is my re-stealth. 2-minute cooldown. Some people might say that it needs to be fast. I need to be fast when I'm vanishing into stealth in combat, but it has such a long cooldown. I don't want a long cooldown to be taking up one of my priority keys. Now I have stealth, just the normal stealth, keybound to F1, and I have it keybound to F1 because I'm only going to be using that before a fight, or 99% of the time that will only be used before a fight or after a fight. So I keep it keybound because it does need to be quite fast, and sometimes I like to get as close to a point as possible before going into stealth, and that's why I have it keybound for just emergencies. But you could get away with it being unbound, but I don't like many of my abilities to be unbound, so I have it keybound to F1, and that means that I either have to stretch my middle finger or take my fingers off WASD, and that's not something I want to do. And you do have to take your finger that's normally on A off to stretch your middle finger to F1, so without going into details it's quite difficult to press. So that's why I have something like Stealth keybound to something like F1. Now I also have a CM Storm Inferno mouse, and this has mouse buttons, and you will probably know that mouse buttons are possibly the easiest to press overall. My Flechette round, I have that keybound to one of my mouse buttons, and that's because Flechette round I want it to be fast, and I want it to be right before I use either my back blast or my shoot first. So I have Flechette round keybound to one of my mouse buttons. I have cover, crouch, keybound to another one because that needs to be really fast. I just want to jump in cover and then jump back out again. So that's why I have that keybound to a mouse button, because it needs to be fast. I also have my dodge ability keybound to a mouse button because when I see an enemy using a very damaging move, I'm going to be using dodge to attempt to dodge that attack. So that needs to be fast as well, because I need to have good reaction time. And then a load of stuff like defense screen, not going to be using it very often, so I'll just keybind it to B because it's just a little defensive cooldown. It doesn't do that much for me, it's not that good of an ability. It's alright, it's a good defensive ability, but it's not going to take up one of my priority keys because it has a long cooldown, and it doesn't really save my life a lot of the time. And then I've got stuff like Lucky Shots, which is my buff, Sprint, Recuperate. I've got all them stocked up on the rest of this bar except from Crouch and Flechette rounds. So one of my action bars is taken up with out of combat things, so I just don't bother keybinding them. The only one I have keybound that is out of combat is my mount, because that just gets really annoying when I have to click my mount. But I didn't need the key for anything else. And that's basically all I have to say for the action bar key bindings. If you want to change them, you have to go into Preferences, then press the key bindings tab at the bottom and go into Quick Bar. But I'm just going to say now a few of the key bindings that I think you should have for PvP, and one of them is to set a focus target or swap a focus target. This isn't going to take up one of your priority keys, but I have it set to Alt-Z because it is not that hard to press Alt and Z. Alt is right next to Z on my keyboard, so it's just tapping them both at the same time. It's not going to be hard to tap them both at the same time, so that's why I have that set to focus target. So it's mildly fast, not as fast as my priority keys. And then the other thing you need is acquire focus target's target. I have that set to a mouse button. It does say F11, but I programmed one of my mouse buttons to match F11. And the reason why I have acquire focus target's target is because in rated war zones you need to be able to focus a teammate of yours, say the lead DPSer, and he's going to target all the enemies that the rest of the DPSers need to target. So that's when I'm going to press Alt-Z, and Alt-Z is going to swap my focus target to when the lead DPSer dies to the next lead DPSer, and I'm going to keep doing Alt-Z until I get to the next lead DPSer. And then when I press F11, which is my mouse button for me, it acquires my focus target's target, so it's going to acquire the lead DPSer's target. And I can keep pressing F11, it's going to keep getting my lead DPSer's target, so everyone's going to know who to target, and because we're all going to be focusing the lead DPSer, the enemy's going to go down very fast. But you need to have acquire focus target and target focus target's target keybound. That's all I have to say for key bindings, guys. I hope it helped, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of SWTOR Weekly. Be sure to subscribe to Red Light Broadcasting and thumbs up this video if you enjoyed it. I've been Optics as always. Thanks for watching, guys.